I was like, all right, let's do that. And I wake up this morning going, sure. So I get there and I'm like, I'm tired. And my hammies are gone. So usually for strongman, that's a bad idea. I was like, okay, I'll do carries. So I did the row pulls, and actually weight-wise, that was a PR.
Really?
Hey, I've never used 3 plates.
Yeah.
On the row pull.
3 plates on bricks.
Yeah, I've never done 3 plates on bricks with a black rope. And I didn't even stop or anything. I was like, shit, especially building up like that, because I ended up doing 5 sets.
Yeah.
Whatever the fuck it was. I was like, all right.
Yeah, as it started going, I was like, you guys just going to pull that rope all fucking day? Or what?
Yeah, it was weird. And then the yoke carry was, I don't know, 750, 760. I haven't put over 700 on my back since that workout on Unscared. And even that was 715. Yeah. So I haven't put 750 since like the pure strongman training days.
When we were talking about too, like you're also lighter. Quite a bit lighter.
10 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
It's 10 pounds on around the waist. It's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's my biggest problem now. Is as my waist gets smaller, it's like all of my top end goes. Like that's where I realized, like as I was losing weight, the first little bit was fun. It was so much fat, kind of carrying everywhere.
And now it's
the first 15 kilos even didn't cost me a ton. The last bit now that I kind of basically pop back and forth under 130 kilos now in body weight, is that now that's where I feel it in here. All of a sudden, like when I squat, it's like, oh, it's not here like
so suddenly you're asking your obliques to do the work instead of just sheer
just pushing into pressure.
That's where I feel it. So but it was very interesting because my structure my core didn't give up on the yoke carries because my legs were just plain not strong enough to carry 750, which is, again, like, yes, I've done 200 pound stat, yes, but my legs have to get stronger because I haven't done heavy in so long. But I was like, oh.
But that's after you're pretty much nearing those numbers
now.
And this is now after 6 weeks of no carbs, no sugar.
Yeah, it made no difference. Honestly, that's the first time I put that much weight. I've lifted that much weight in 4 years.
Yeah.
And they were all PRs for the last 4 years. The row pulls was heavy.
Yeah.
And the yoke has been a long time. Again, my legs couldn't take it, but that's normal. I know how to fix that. And the frame was good too.
Yeah.
But the biggest difference was there was no anxiety. Like I finished the training going, I'm fine. Whereas before, like it took so much to get the weight moving that the crash was ridiculous. That was like 2 hours ago, so I'm going to talk slower than usual, which is good, I guess. But normally, there's no fucking way in the old days where I could have done a podcast 2 hours later. I was done for the day.
Yeah, it was. This has taken many different iterations, but it's been we'll podcast at the office and then train, or we'll podcast in the morning and then train, and then there's just been a few days here where we've been podcasting kind of post training. I don't know. You seem to be keeping it together. We haven't had any duds the last few weeks.
Yeah, but that's very again, like that's. I'm like, oh, cool, but it's such a strange behavior.
Yeah.
Before, I could not do that. That's why I always train at 6 at night, because otherwise I was ruined for the day.
Yeah.
Now, actually, kind of the sympathetic keeps me going, but like the fact that I could do a strongman training on day 3 and be fine after shows you that I think more than physically tired. It was my nervous system getting shot from so much anxiety and stuff going into the strongman training.
Yeah.
Which we're going to talk about today, because I think the reason that I'm not as anxious as I was when I train or all that stuff is because of the no fix November since October for me, and the amount of VO2 max work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So by that I mean low level cardio, 120. It's not exactly active rest technically, but it's kind of VO2 max training. We're going to talk about it today. But it turns out it's actually extremely important even for strongmen.
Well, that's one of the things we talked about with Andrew also, was one of the constraints on his training was like, I got to be useful outside the gym. Meaning I can't just smash my shit in the gym and then go and lay on the couch and stare at the ceiling the rest of the day and tune out. And that's a piece that I think you're slowly coming to build it, integrate that within your life, is when you train, and can you still do the things you need to do well, and you have to keep trying to see how those things improve. But I still have to train as hard as I can.
Yeah. Because that'll be me always.
Yeah.
So that was always the problem, right? Which one do I choose?
Yeah.
I don't want to choose
either. You had to choose.
Yeah, exactly. But I kind of had to choose. Yeah.
And to a certain degree, once beyond a certain level, you do. There is a certain point where, let's say maybe one day every 5 weeks is going to fuck you up and it's going to cost you a day.
Right, exactly. Or even if I want to go back to professional type strength of strongmen and stuff like that, I would have to sacrifice probably a day or two a week where I'd be like just destroyed. But I'd be curious to see how far though. But I have a different approach now because it's not getting my pro card in strongman that interests me. It's getting back to close to my old numbers. I'm 10 pounds lighter, so it won't be exactly if I can even get close to the old numbers, I'll be happy. But I also want, because we're going to talk about it today, because of the VO2 max and everything, like I'll go run a 5K just to prove a point to myself and then to people to show like the StrongFit principles work no matter what. And I'll break I'll go under 20 minutes this time. And stuff like that. So now I'm more interested in doing that, going under 20 on the 5K while being very close to my old numbers, while being at 230, but lean.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so all the stuff that that you always wanted, but you go like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Now I kind of want to do that.
I just want to get leaner and stronger and bigger and happier and be able to run far and
learn faster.
I want to get taller.
No, not that one. But I wish, but that one I'm not going to win. But it's all that stuff. Like, because the pro strongman stuff, there are sacrifices I'm not willing to make.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go on the juice. Not that you can't do it without it, but just like, it helps. It would help, let's put it this way.
There is a reason that people take steroids in sports, guys. It works.
Especially in strength sports, Like, by the way, recovery alone, right?
Yeah.
But I believe I can make up on the recovery by doing the no fix and stuff like that. I really believe that I can tremendously improve my recovery through the no fix and through the active meditation training without requiring steroids.
Yeah.
Because I think for what I noticed from my reaction, a lot of the recovery was a nervous system issue more than a physical one. I recovered really well from strongman, but I believe my nervous system was shot. And I do believe anxiety had something to do with that.
Well, that's interesting. Sometimes anxiety comes up. It's hard for me to gauge a cause, but I see it often in the CrossFit space.
Yes.
Probably more so than I do in other fitness spaces, I think.
Yeah. We see a lot.
There are some bodybuilders that are that way, but for the most part, I see it in CrossFit gyms at a very high percentage. That's not scientific data, it's just things we see.
That's what we see.
But so to extrapolate on the conversation we had with Wim and Bart the other day about lactate.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So after,
that's what kind of opened up that.
Yeah, as we kind of started having that conversation, I don't even remember if that came up in it or afterwards.
No, in it, because I remember Wim saying like, I didn't know that. Did you? And I was like, I did not know that either. Yeah. And so, by the way, it feels nice to be back to the two of us talking.
We've been
way too many people. Like, I feel we're cheating on each other at that stage. Yeah,
we've had wonderful guests and all, but I'm glad to be here.
Exactly right. It's like, can we just talk, please? Like, you were way over there.
I know.
I to talk to you. I make jokes with the other one laughing. I'm like, man, I miss you. I mean, kind of thing. Yeah.
But so
like
as
the big joke, only you laugh.
Exactly.
I mean, like, whatever.
As the podcast went on, though, we had so much information to cover there on that and what they do there, and having them there, we need to get into their results that they had gone through and all that stuff. But now you've kind of had them poke back at some of their data now. Yeah. Because will you tell me about the connection that you kind of made?
Yeah. And by the way, it was a really cool podcast. So I was very interested. The reason I didn't go too much at lactate is because I wanted them to give hard numbers. Yeah. Because that's what they do, right? And Bart is very much on the science side. So people understand how far this can be taken toward endurance and stuff like that, because we mostly talk about strength. I thought it was very cool. But that point about lactate is a fuel for the heart. Ooh, that opens up such a major rabbit hole. I mean, another one at this stage. We haven't even done the podcast on the task negative network.
Oh, fuck.
I know,
we'll get
right?
to that in a couple
weeks. That's why he came for,
like, on
here
this trip. I was like, it's the perfect time for us to reestablish
And now
this.
we have 17 podcasts. It's just we haven't even touched the task negative network yet.
We'll get there, guys.
Yeah, we'll get there. No way. Right. So lactate. So let's go explain what lactate is. I guess we have to start there, right? It was seen mostly as a byproduct, right, of work in an anaerobic state.
Yeah. My understanding at the time, or a while, it was a very basic understanding that I think regular people have. It's like, I got all this lactate in my legs, and I fucking got it. That's kind of the only terminology that the average Joe
Not
ever
entirely
uses.
untrue, by the way.
Correct.
You start to do any work really, especially in an anaerobic state, so without oxygen, and you start to produce what was seen at the time as a byproduct of exercise. Right, and so it turns out, and so we called it lactic acid. Yeah. Then that conversation for fuck's sake, let's say lactate. Right, let's make it easy. Because then there's pyruvate and whatever. Lactate! Right, so there's lactate. So we saw lactate as a byproduct. Like you exercise, it builds like all that waste product in your legs, and that's what burns and all that stuff. So the burning, first of all, is not that. But that byproduct, so lactate, it seems to be actually not a byproduct at all, and something far more important than that. So it's a fuel source. But to the degree where it's actually past the fuel source, it seems to be almost acting as a hormone. Mm-hmm. It's a crazy shit. So first of all, and most important part, lactate is a fuel for the heart. Once you exercise, once you get going, what keeps your heart a muscle, what gives the energy to the heart to keep going is lactate. And there's actually a huge relationship between glycogen and lactate. It just keeps on going like this, where they, and so it's fascinating. For example, lactate can go through the blood-brain barrier and actually becomes a fuel for the brain as well. So lactate is actually a hormone, a fuel source for the heart and the brain. So reading the lactate is a fuel for the heart, the first thing I went to is testing activity network. Yeah. I was like, there has to be a connection between the two. So I'm like, all right, so let me extrapolate. By the way, we're going to go into a rabbit hole on that one, but let me explain to you how I think. I hear fuel for the heart. I'm like, and we just talked about the fact that the heart and the sense of self are connected. So I'm like, then would it be possible that lactate is a fuel for the sense of self as well, in that sense? Mm-hmm. Do I know? No, but that's the point. But that's the hypothesis I'm starting from. Yeah. What is good science? It's a Bayesian inference. Is you start with an hypothesis that you formulate, then you bounce over observation versus what you don't know, and you try to see what happens, right? And so I started to go, well, let me research lactate. And I found that most of the questions I had were already answered. But then that brought the question, then why have you not linked it together?
Yeah. There is all of the data that you could imagine that's out there.
It's already there.
On lactate. All of it.
But lactate,
it's actually one of the most studied things in strength, conditioning, endurance, and sport.
But in psychology as well. That's what I'm going to go into. In neuroscience, lactate is understood to be a fuel for the brain, and way more than that.
Yeah.
But why are we not fucking talking about it? But it's as though
each of those things happened in a vacuum.
Totally.
Because everything that you had sent me and everything that I've looked at, I don't find anything trying to integrate.
No. Or practical application.
Yeah. Well, that's it too. It's like, this is lactate and this is what it does.
This is mostly what I read now is like, hey, look, there's a relationship. And there's no end.
Yeah.
None of this is being applied on human terms. I found that fascinating. I think that's why most of the time I talk about stuff, anybody is like almost shocked. He was like, dude, if it was that simple, it'd be done already.
Yeah.
Like other smart people, or even smarter people would have figured the shit out. Yeah, but the smart people in this field are stuck in measuring.
Yeah.
So all the papers that I read are dick measuring contests.
Yeah.
Look, I measured better than you did.
I measured more thoroughly. I removed more variables. I've narrowed it down to just this and this. Yes. What's also is crazy is when you try to read those things, there isn't, like you say, there's no practical application. No. There's really nothing you can gain from any of that information, kind of. It's just like a status check. Here is the way things are.
Unless you're already looking for something.
Yeah. Now, but the problem is, like, if I'm going to read a wonderful article about why, as men get older, their hair gets thinner and they start to go bald, the learning about that mechanism is probably very interesting, but doesn't fucking help the sad shit going on the top of my head right now. But it just doesn't. So it's of no use to me.
Right. So
knowing how it all goes, unless someone's going to take it and make it something I can use.
Right, exactly. So it would be interesting if there was someone asking the questions, but then no one is. So if you can't produce something of value in the sense that you can sell, nothing is being talked about. Mm-hmm. It's the most... So I've noticed that in the medical world, and obviously tremendously in the fitness industry. Like we have a friend. I'm not going to use names or locations or stuff like that because I don't want to call anybody out. But we have a friend that recently went to a seminar type where they were talking about squatting, and they were giving measurement, like the guy had 10 very complicated measurements with tapes that have to do with the angle of the hip with this and the test and the stuff and the feet and the thing. And at the end, they have 10 measurements to give a squat stance, because that's what it was for, just to give a squat stance. And they came up with some very, very big, fancy stuff, number, percentage, and everything. And the friend we're talking about ended up getting exactly the stance that was recommended for him. And how did he do it? By squatting a sandbag. Mm-hmm. He started squatting a sandbag, he found tension, and his stance naturally adjusted to his best possible stance according to the numbers of those people.
And much like the way, mathematics tries to be balanced on both sides, if he just, so they wanted to see this position, this right stance, this right position. He did it in a way that gave him the tension first, and then he got the position.
Exactly.
However, if he just stood there, his feet at this spot in that position and then squatted, that doesn't mean anything from a tension standpoint,
right? But no, for sure. But that got me thinking about the industry from what they bring to people. And I was like, what we are doing in the case of the sandbag is like, hey, let me show you how you can fix it. Mm-hmm. Whereas the 10 complicated measures,
I've fixed it. Here you go.
I'm selling you something to fix it. And it's not the same thing. But there's an interesting part on both sides. If I were to give someone, there's a sandbag that'll teach you to squat. There's 10 very complicated measurements with numbers to show you the proper stance of the squat. What do you think people will go toward?
The number.
The complicated stuff. Because now he looks sciencey, so he has to be more right than you giving me simply a sandbag. So it's on both sides. It's on both sides. And so I do believe like the entire industry evolved to quench the thirst for complication of people out there, or the need to look smart or to be smart, whichever it is. And on the other side, for people to not give you the tools to fix yourself, but selling you the tools in a way where you have to go back and ask for more.
Yeah, because you didn't learn anything in the process.
Of course
you gave me these tools, it got me whatever that gets me.
Exactly.
Do you have anything else?
Yeah, for the shoulder too.
Because I don't. Then at that point, you haven't even become a part of a process that allows you to take the things that you learn about that and apply it to something else. So then you didn't learn anything about the squat that you can take to your deadlift or to your carries or to anything or to any exercise. You only literally learned in a vacuum how to hold that position, and that's it.
But that kind of brings the point though. It's conversation of the chicken and the egg, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But usually I'll blame those people, and I do, don't get me wrong, and everything. But if you out there will always choose the complicated measurement, that means that you don't have to be involved in the process. Like, I'm sorry, but how much of it is on you?
Well, that's what you'll always get too, and it's really the nature of any business. Like with the way capitalism works.
Yeah.
If you're going to continue to choose to spend money on this shit, then you're going to continue to get more of it.
So, because we hear people bitching, but a lot of it is on you guys.
Yeah.
You keep asking for those fucking measurements. Like I see that on YouTube and stuff like that. Again, I'm not calling out anybody, so I'm not going to use names, but I see people out there asking questions with some very, very fancy words, but yet not answering any questions. But here we come, trying to answer the hard questions with simple terms. And yet, those guys that only ask questions, never answer them, but have fancy words, seems to be many times more considered, or at least they look more sciencey because of the word they use. Do you understand that that's what's happening? Like, do you think I can't use fancy words?
Yeah.
Right, but we're choosing not to, so we keep the podcast at a level necessary for teaching, for learning.
Mostly it's something that I can navigate.
Yes, exactly. No, but that's the point of learning.
Yes,
in fact,
exactly.
like it's Marcus Aurelius, you say like, think like a smart person, talk like a common man. Mm-hmm. That's the point. It's like, if I understand it well enough, I should be able to talk like a common man, and I should be able to give the ideas in a way that almost anyone can understand outside of their ego getting in the way. Right? But yet, look at who get to sell stuff. It's people that put fancy and complicated names that allow them to elevate themselves in status over people that understand the shit better. And I blame them for it, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, why do you think it's working?
Yeah.
Because you are enabling this.
Yeah.
So that's the industry we're in.
Whose bills are you paying?
Right.
And you wonder why that's what you get.
Exactly, right? Yeah, that's so. I see that a lot in the sense also with those studies where the guy were like, well, we're not going to try to answer the question where we're not sure. We're not going to go into the unsafe areas. We're just going to go with a safe dick measuring contest where I can be smarter than my fellow academics, write a paper, get tenure, and I'm out.
Yeah.
But you're not never promoting navigation. You're not promoting exploration.
Yeah.
You're not promoting knowledge, just information. But that's the capitalistic world you're all asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so it always surprises me because I'm going to talk about lactate and all of this. I just Googled it.
Yeah.
I just literally went lactate and serotonin, lactate and nervous system everything, and the first 2 pages were 12 paper was like, first of all, this is awesome. I got all my answers. But second of all, why is no one talking about this?
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing.
So we're going to talk about it. What did you find?
Right, so lactate. So what? So I'm going to blurt everything out, and then I'm going to explain how we can make it work in a practical way, and I'm going to use VO2 max and VLA max. Not that that's a very actually oversimplifying point, but I want to use those terms in order to talk about training in that sense. But you're going to have to understand that it's not entirely true either. So
there will be phrases where you'll say, we need you to train to build your VLA max. However, just boosting that number is not the point.
Right, so that's the problem with the VO2 max is I'm going to say do that, and then some people are going to go, there's a better way to build VO2 max. And that's true. But the point will not be VO2 max. The point will be to do what we say that will build a VO2 max, maybe not as efficiently as another way, but the other way has a cost that I do not want to integrate in what we're going to do.
Plus, building the VO2 max is not actually the goal. It's a tool
that you're using
to get you
exactly.
further.
Yeah. VO2 max is a measure, not a target.
Yeah.
Guys, remember that, please. Measurement, not target.
It's a symptom of the progress we're trying to have you make.
Exactly, that's all. So it's a measurement, not a target. Because again, there are ways that are more effective than what I'm going to talk about in order to build VO2 max, but that's not the point. You're making it into a target and now you're failing. So the idea of lactate is a fuel for the heart. I'm like, all right, so what if lactate is a fuel for the sense of self? Mm-hmm. I'm like, all right, let me go at this. So I'm starting to look at 2 things, anxiety versus depression. Right, all right. So I start to look at a study. Study is simple. We give lactate to people. It's a solution, right? Yeah. People with anxiety freak out. People with depression, 0. They get absolutely 0 out of it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's very interesting. So I start to see lactate as a fuel for the brain. I start to read more. There's a huge thing between that and glycogen. There's a relationship between lactate and even like brain serotonin in the way it's affected and stuff like that. I was like, all right, so let me start like this. Lactate is a fuel for the sense of self. I build more lactate. I create a more confident person. I build a sense of self by creating more lactate. Okay, so there's a name for the capacity to produce lactate. It's called VLA max. Right, so I build the VLA max, I get a higher sense of self. Right, so I'm like, all right, so if I build lactate, I get a stronger sense of self. I'm seeing a study that says, yeah, but for example, infantile autism, right, is shown that all the symptoms are associated with higher lactate. Higher lactates in adolescents were showing to have depression. But I'm like, but that's weird because if I give lactate to some people with depression, they don't freak out. Mm-hmm. And so you go, okay, what happens? And so now I'm starting to look on the other side as well. And I'm starting to look at VO2 max. What is VO2 max? It's the capacity to use oxygen for exercise, for example. But it's basically what it is the capacity to use the lactate as fuel so that it can, So I was like, okay.
Because if you don't use enough, the lactate will build up.
And that seemed to be the issue.
Yeah.
So a buildup of lactate then can be seen as, for example, taking people from anxiety to panic attack. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, but the problem is then most people will look at that and say, well, let's reduce lactate. But I'm like, but if you reduce lactate, we reduce the fuel to the heart, to the brain and everything. So why would we want to do that? Yeah. And what happens if you reduce lactate? So then now that's what I'm starting to look. What happens if I reduce lactate? What happens if I have a high VO2 max, but basically, so the capacity to use the fuel, but no actual fuel because I'm not producing it. And I was like, well, I know that one. Those are the people that can't push the sled, that can't go into the fight mode. Mm-hmm. And what do we see there? We see usually depression. People that are on the depressed side, sad, they just can't push the sled. So I was like, all right, so let's see anxiety And depression. What I have, depressed people, they can't go to fight. So we know that with Richard, we worked on that a lot. The way out of depression is creating a fight. How do you create a fight? That's where the learning comes in, new skills, all that stuff. Right? New skill, building the fight again, right? It's like, all right, so that's how do I get people to have depression? By using the sled, pushing, burning the questions, right? The capacity to produce lactate. I was like, okay, but what about anxiety? What's anxiety? And what I noticed with anxiety, talking about the CrossFit gyms, is there's a lot of should in anxiety. That's usually what you see.
I should be able to do this. I should have done that faster.
Right, I should have, and that's where really anxiety is I should have done this. What is should? Should is the gap between what you think you're capable of doing and what you can actually do. All right, so what is, I should be able to do this? What is your idea of your potential? I was like, what if that's part of the sense of self? Right. So that means that I have a high VLA max, right? That means I have a high sense of self. I am capable of a lot.
Of fuel for a lot of...
I produce a lot of fuel, but my VO2 max is low. So I cannot use the fuel. So then it fuels the panic attack, it fuels the anxiety. So I was like, so if I have a high VO2 max and a low VLA max, I would be toward depression. If I have a high VLA max, a low VO2 max, I would be toward anxiety. And I'm like, well, okay, let me go check. And that's when I start to study to look at all those studies. And that's basically what they were confirming. But every time they were putting it in a way where they were not looking at the other side of the arch. So the biggest problem was that it's not the base value, it's the ratio between the two. So it's not that you have a high VLA max that gives you anxiety, is you have a high VLA max versus your VO2 max. Because some people will have a higher VLA max but not be anxious because their VO2 max is higher. Where someone has a lower VLA max but their VO2 max is so low, that's what creates anxiety. So that it was a ratio-based stuff and not a base value.
Okay.
So people were wrong to say they have lactate. No, they have lactate that they cannot use. And that seems to be the problem both sides. So what do you see? We saw that a lot with Richard. You have someone in the middle. You build VLA max, they have a higher sense of self. Over time, starts to give them anxiety. CrossFit after 2 years, right? So CrossFit is mostly building the lactate, the capacity to lactate, right? Yeah. And over time, starts to build anxiety. So you remove CrossFit and you make them do easy cardio. They feel a lot better. But then what you see depression because they don't have the VLA max anymore. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I was like, can we test that? Wim, do you have numbers? Start looking at numbers. He's sending them to me. And then what did we see? We saw exactly that. VO2 max very high with low capacity for fight equals depression. I've seen that everywhere. And then very high capacity to produce lactate, me, but very low VO2 max because I never do cardio. I get anxiety when I train. Made me quit strongman, all that stuff, because eventually my nervous system could not take it. But maybe it couldn't take it because I couldn't process the lactate as fuel. So I couldn't fuel my heart and fuel my brain to do the stuff I wanted to do. And so for the last 2 weeks, what did I do? I basically raised my VO2 max. Yeah. How did I do that? With the active meditation stuff, which means steady cardio, 120, and stay there to teach my system to flush, not to flush the lactate, to use it as fuel. So what did I say about all this? My C energy level is through the roof. And what Bart was saying is that kind of training promotes mitochondria and all that stuff. The capacity to use lactate as fuel. And so, can you imagine that rabbit hole? Yeah. So we can do a ratio, we can test VO2 max. That's why I'm using VO2 max and VLA max, because it can be tested. Yeah. We do a ratio between the two, and we see under which ratio you go toward depression, over which you go toward anxiety. And now you have a way to get to both is by leveling, getting the ratio back to where it should be, the arch.
Yeah, and then it gives you a way. What's interesting to me is when I look at it, you have a way, and this isn't to say that there's no use for pharmaceuticals in these treatments, or not to say that there's no use in any sort of other treatment, from therapy to all those other things. However, this is another tool that you can use to give you, hopefully, to give you a direction on what you can do with your body that doesn't cost any money, doesn't use words, and it's not drugs.
Yeah. But again, it's a do-it-yourself, right?
Which is usually an indicator that it means it's probably going to work in the long run for you, better than those other short fixes.
But especially the drugs. I'm sorry, but we're going back to the people want the measurement that does not involve them actually doing the stuff. It's the same thing with drugs. It's been shown time and time again that the usage of antidepressant is not doing what it says they do. If you look at the numbers, 80% of people still are depressed after taking, it's not an antidepressant, it's a less depressant. We had a podcast about this, please watch it. But that whole idea that the drugs are working for depression, that's a lie. They've been around for at least 50 years now.
Yeah.
Right, so how come they don't work? Do we have less depression than before?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. Right, so how come it's not working? Like the whole, and again, but so do we want to blame pharmaceutical industry? Totally. But just remember, it's a system, and who's feeding the system? You guys are. The only way out of all this is if you understand that it's a do-it-myself thing. So you have anxiety. Let's do practical. You have anxiety, what do? I want you to raise your VO2 max. What does that mean? There are ways to do this more effective than what I'm talking about. But mine will be done in order to deal with anxiety. Right, remember that. So,
not to just deal with the VO2 max. That's the difference.
But
the
we
end
will,
result
by the way,
here
we will,
is,
but yes, it's past that.
For you to feel better, not
it's
move this number.
Also VO2 max, but not just VO2 max. There's other stuff that put more constraint.
Yeah.
Sorry, that put more constraints onto the whole thing, right? So we're gonna keep the heart rate at 120. It's not an absolute, it's more or less. Why 120? We have Mike and John. Mike lives in the parasympathetic, John lives in the sympathetic. This is how you raise your vagal tone, by the way. 120 seems to be around a heartbeat when you switch from Mike to John. You go from parasympathetic, you lose the vagus nerve, and you go towards sympathetic. That's why after 120, usually around, again, that has to be calculated, it's not that simple. But your heart rate is not 120, it's 150, because that you go sympathetic and then your heart rate just loses it. We don't want to go sympathetic. We want to stay within the vagus nerve, right? That's where the VO2 max is going to be. And so we're going to go low and slow. So by the way, running at 120, you're running, I did last night. Oh my God, you run slow. But that's the point, right? You're never going to go sympathetic. So that means you're going to run slow, keeping your heart rate at 120 for, 30, 40 minutes, an hour, doesn't matter, right? All nasal breathing, outside if possible, trying to promote that raise of VO2 max through all the stuff we talked about between the heart and the task negative network and all that stuff. So if you have anxiety, I don't want you to stop training hard, because it will work, because you'll stop raising lactate, but eventually it'll pound your sense of self, and we don't want that. Yeah. So I want you to keep training hard.
Yeah, that's more of a matter of if you just stop training hard, you're going to be stopping doing the thing that you're good at, and you're just going to not be developing a weakness either. So this way, we need to bring everything up to a level instead of just correcting down.
Right, because what matters is the ratio between the two. I don't want you to lower the lactate. I actually want you to keep it exactly where it is. I just want you to raise your VMO. So you're going to do 4 or 5 times a week if you have anxiety. You're going to do VO2 max training, which means long and slow cardio. Can be on an elliptical, can be on a bicycle, can be running. You do it whatever you want. I switch. I go to Global Gym. I use that fucking round machine thing. And then I'll do some elliptical. I'll do some running. I have to go very, very slow. Roaming is not happening.
Yeah.
So it's usually elliptical, bicycle, and then that looks like boxing thing. Right? Airdyne, same thing, too hard. Right? And you're going to do that 4 or 5 times a week. That's going to be December. We're going to call it active meditation. And that will allow you to bring the VO2 max while doing other stuff for your task negative network. And that will fight anxiety. If you have depression, I want you to learn to produce lactate. So what does that mean? That means sprints, sled sprints, Airdyne stuff, but not 3-minute bullshit sprint Airdyne, like 15 seconds on a minute. And like, you'll know when you produce lactate, like your heart rate literally will want to stop working. So in that sense, you want to go sympathetic.
In your ears, like
you want to go as sympathetic as fuck. So what do? I go on an Airdyne and I go as hard as I can. I did that yesterday. That's why I was so wasted today. I did 5 of them where I went as hard as I could, but while maintaining nose breathing. The second I gave up on the nose breathing is when I'm done with that. Then I would look actually at first and see until my rate got back down to 120 and then shot back up. So it was basically 120 to 180, back and forth like that 5 times. How long does it take me to go to 120? I have no idea. But after a while, I didn't need the watch because I knew exactly the feeling. There was a feeling, a moment where even mentally I was like, I'm ready. That was 120.
Yeah, you start to understand what that threshold feels like, and then you're no longer so dependent on the number.
But what was fascinating
because
with this
I still hate the idea.
No, don't be dependent on the number. Yes, exactly. You cannot do it. Yeah. This was just for me to understand the feeling. Yeah. Yeah. Once I understood the feeling, I took the watch out and then I kept going. What I found fascinating, because I checked, that was the point of the Apple Watch, was at 1:30, I wasn't ready mentally to go. At 1:20, I was. Every single time, which shows you what we talked about, the heart being a sense of self. It's my heart who told my brain when I was ready, not the other way around. You're not ready when you think you're ready. You're ready when your heart tells you you're ready. How funny was that? Yeah. The seat of consciousness in the heart. Like that's what I saw doing that. Anyway, so I would be like that. I did 5 sets, then I want to row something. I row as hard as I could while maintaining nasal breathing. The second I give up on nasal breathing, I stop. I row either easy or usually I would just stop, walk around, get my heart rate back to that same feeling. And I did that on sprints, on sled sprints as well. Yeah. And that's fucking producing lactate. Or you can do a 5x5 on the back squat or whatever produces lactate. And that's usually what we see in people that are depressed is exercise has a tremendous benefits to them. But the exercise that is beneficial is the introduction of lactate. You're going to die soon. There's one fly who's going to die very soon.
It's so small that there's no way they're going to see it on camera.
So we're not crazy. There's actually a fly. The introduction of lactate in their system is what helped them go after depression. Which is very interesting because that study with that adolescent shows you that lactate, there was a correlation between lactate and depression. Yeah, but that's the point, is lactate that is not being processed. So how lactate could start with anxiety and then drive to depression.
And that's why if you were to just go on those correlations, it's okay, well, we just need to reduce lactate.
Exactly.
Or on the other side, it's depression causes lactate.
Right. And then, so now you have something that says both. Yeah. Lactate causes depression, lactate causes anxiety, and a study that tells you that lactate does not cause anxiety. Because it shows that lactate in depressed people did not create a panic attack at all. Whereas on anxious people, it created one. So you see what I mean? Yeah. So if you're not understanding ratio versus base value, you're fucked. Yeah. So how interesting was that? And so for depression, it would be learn to fight. And the best way to do it is physically, not mentally. So there's the psychotherapy argument of talking and, like getting in touch with your feeling and everything. That's almost like a VO2 max type of thing, right? Yeah. Like, so you flush all that bad stuff. I'm like, all right, but you're still going to have to learn to fight. And that's from a physiological perspective with lactate, it seems to be proven. So there are many studies like that are already out there. I Googled them, found 10, that was showing that they were using lactate as an antidepressant in rats whose ovaries were cut. I don't know why it gave them depression, but it did. There's literally the name of the study. I can find it if you guys want. And you want me to... Well, we don't need it. Yeah, we can always list it. But literally, I think it's the name of the study, is lactate as an antidepressant on mice post-menopause. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. And then again, lactate being given to anxious people created a panic attack, whereas given on depressed people didn't do that.
And what I've seen in looking through that stuff is there's also nobody extrapolated anything based on any action that can be taken or any next step at all. I only saw relation. And I'm like, are you guys even trying anything?
It's like they're taking zero risk to
you don't want to say, you don't want to speculate.
It's like almost like it's not my job to produce anything out of this.
Could you imagine being in that space where you are not allowed to speculate out loud? Because your reputation would go to shit if you just speculated based on something.
But that brings the key, right? So if you're not allowed to extrapolate to produce, who is?
Yeah.
The pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah. Well, because if we do, which we do, then people will just say, well, that's not very scientific.
That's not, and that's not what that study said.
I don't try to be a scientist. I just try to think sometimes.
But I'm trying to be a scientist. I'm just trying to be one who extrapolates. Yeah. By the way, that is part of Bayesian inference. In Bayesian inference, and that's what all good science is, you're supposed to try to, no, you can't guess what you don't know, but to take that into account.
You have to know that you don't know everything.
Yeah, and then you have to know exactly where it is that you don't know. That over there, I don't know. And you have to gauge more or less how much you don't know. Mm-hmm. That's always been part, that's a guess, of course, obviously it's a guessing game, but it's part of science, always been, because it allows you to narrow down the observation. It's a probability-based model. But you have to how can we do science and not extrapolate? That's post-World War II producing capitalistic mentality of all I got to do is establish a strong correlation through measurement, and that's good enough.
I was listening to a podcast. They're talking about some guy. I don't know the context, but he was like a fraud. They were shocked that he got this job as a professor. He was teaching students, but he was like a college dropout, had no background in the thing, but was just teaching students at a university in whatever the subject was. I don't even know what. It doesn't matter to me. But it was funny. So I got to thinking about it. I'm like, you would never, ever, ever be qualified to teach at a university.
No.
And that's what's funny. But it's only because of what?
Because I don't have a piece of paper.
Yeah, because you didn't go through like their indoctrination segment. You didn't spend a portion of your life learning only from that piece, so that you can parrot that out.
Yeah, I'm not part of the system. So
no, so then and I'm like, well, I know, and you do too. We've had so many people from the university background that will come to you and to say about you or in the podcast and be like, this is far beyond the things that I was dealing with when I went for my PhD.
Yeah.
And yet you would not be allowed to speak.
Or even to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'd be shut down so fast.
Yeah.
But again, and I understand where they're coming from in the sense because it's system-based, but I want to tell people out there, you are creating that system.
Yeah.
We have to stop forgetting that we're all humans creating a human system. Blaming the laws and all that stuff.
Yes.
Who do you think are creating those? Ask yourself that question, which one would you take? Grab a sandbag, figure out your stance, would take one set, 2 minutes, right?
Yep.
Or buying something, so for free, right? Buy a sandbag. Please, a StrongFit sandbag, be nice. Or go get to that dude over there who has a lot of initial after all his name, who will give you a set of 10 very complicated measurements. Which one would you trust more?
And which one do you think represents real knowledge? Right?
A do it yourself or a listen to me. Or listen to me.
Yeah.
And be honest, which one would you choose?
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 would choose the complicated measurements and everything because it's given to you instead of you doing it yourself. But that's the society we're creating right now.
Because if I feel depressed or if I feel anxious, it is
the uniform.
But the thing is about those two things specifically is often it is based around, based around action, one way or another. Either action hanging over your head or action you should be taking.
Yes.
So it's always based around that. And yet, how are we treating those things right now, currently, is with inaction.
Food or pills?
Food or pills.
Between the no fix November and that ratio, VO2 max, VLA max, please understand that the ratio is not VO2 max, VLA max. The real ratio is capacity to produce lactate versus capacity to use it as fuel. I'm going to say VO2 max versus VLA max because it makes it easier. They're close enough, but understand that it's not exactly that. But give me the no fix November, give me the ratio of VO2 max versus VLA max, and I'm pretty sure, we're doing it right now with some people, I'm pretty sure you will get a massive handle on anxiety or depression. I believe we have a way to do a do-it-yourself, go at depression versus anxiety thing. Mm-hmm. So I know thank God I'm not Joe Rogan, because I would get the Association of Psychiatrists just coming at me from all angles saying, how dare you, the drugs are good, they do a lot. And I'm like, can you please prove that? Can you give me the numbers where what you're saying is true? Remember the numbers Tyler were talking about with Addiction Clinic, 4% success rate? Why is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Why is it acceptable that 80% of people taking antidepressant feel like shit?
Also,
how come 5 years later they're still on the same fucking pills?
Also, look at there's a very strong correlation. I won't say cause because I don't believe that to be the case. But if you want to talk about how it's not working or it's not enabling you to get further towards a solution, is look up the correlation between people who were on, or have stopped taking, and in most cases stopped taking these antidepressants, and then go out and perpetrate some sort of mass killing.
Yeah,
those numbers, it is.
Wasn't it 9 out of 10?
It's embarrassing. If I was making those medications, I would tell you that for sure. And how nobody's been hung out to dry over that blows my mind.
Nobody's been hung out to dry. The opioid crisis.
Because they'll just say we're trying.
No, but the opioid crisis. No doctor got pummeled over this. Yeah. We're blaming the pharmaceutical stuff, and don't get me wrong, for the good reasons. Yeah. But we're stopping there. We're not talking about the doctors who prescribe the stuff, and we're not talking about the people that accepted the lie that if you have lower back pain, taking a painkiller was a good idea. Yeah. And I know people are going to say, well, they didn't know.
Okay, well, you do now. If you heard this, you do now. So
no, but plus, again, we're going back to infantilization of people. Like at some point, we have to take also responsibility over all this. And it starts with someone tells you, offers you a way to do it yourself, try that first. Right? Before you go buy the complicated stuff and everything. But so all the stuff on the lactate, all that measurement is already there. I find it fascinating. So that idea of lactate as a hormone, as a fuel for the heart and the brain, that will open so many doors for us to work with, because suddenly, first of all, we have a measurement possible with lactate, and we have a way to get to it.
Yeah, so that's what's cool.
We know how to do that.
It's also you can get this subjective but pretty reasonable feedback from a person that you're working at, kind of where they're at on this spectrum, and that does give you the possibility for that. So you take that, and then you take the status of either of where things are, whether they're going to be a more VO2 max biased athlete or more VLA max biased athlete at that point, and then you can know right away what you need to bring into alignment, and that's not arbitrary. That's not like you just need to feel. It's like no, you do more of this exercise with this intent, and you maintain this.
But so,
it's I think it's novel because it's simple for the most part, and the truth is that for the average person, you do not need to do the tests.
Right. So do you need to do a VO2 max test? No, you don't. Like what we're talking about again is active meditation. Like okay, so normally active rest is about 50% of your heart rate. So, okay, so go around more like high vagal tone. So try to train Mike. Yeah. Like people that are anxious, try to train Mike on the parasympathetic side. So basically nasal breathing, stay around 120, do steady, slow cardio. You know the one where you're loose? Yeah. Your mind doesn't have to go into a fight. You don't have to force yourself. You're just cruising on the thing.
And one of the things I remember Kayla said yesterday when we were talking about this was that like when she started going, she realized right away like, I can't make it 45 minutes at this pace because I keep heart rate. And it's like, but then she said she realized, she was like, oh, the point is not that I make it at this pace. Yes, the point is, and if I'm going to spend 45 minutes doing this, I get under 120, all of a sudden it feels like I can.
Yeah, exactly. So the problem was she was at 140, 150. Yeah. And that shows you also what's going to be a problem is people think, well, I'm going to do Murph. Murph is going to get your heart rate at 140, 150 for an hour or whatever, how long it takes you to do it. It will not be. 120 usually means like long and slow. And people are like, oh, I don't want to do that, it's boring. Yeah, but look what it could do for you. Yeah. See energy game going up, anxiety under control.
Are panic attacks boring? No, they're the opposite of fucking boring. So just maybe you need to find a little bit of boring in your life that helps.
Right. And by the way, boring why? Because you can't do something you can't sit and do something for 45 minutes that require you to have a conversation with yourself.
I'm there. That's exactly where I'm at. I'm like,
exactly.
God damn it.
Yeah. No, but you know, like this is.
I was looking forward to November getting over. Right, exactly. Now you got to do all this shit in December.
It keeps going. That means like you can't be on 45 minutes on an elliptical, just cruising, like letting your mind go wherever it wants, sweating a little bit, getting loose. I mean, like, and knowing what it's going to bring you the next day. You can't do that. No. What does that tell you? Right? And on the other side, if you have a high VO2 max, like you see the marathon runners, but you can't fucking push a sled for 200 meters, what does that tell you about your capacity to flight? Right? And those are usually the people that say, I don't feel anything. I'm fine. Right. Yeah. Like, yeah, but you also can't push a fucking sled. You pace on everything, and every time you use an excuse as to why you pace. No, you just can't fight. You can't produce lactate. But remember, lactate is a fuel for the heart and for the brain. Like, Google this. It's everywhere. It's ridiculous. Like, imagine the importance of that. And again, the heart is the seat of consciousness. That means lactate is the fuel to build consciousness. Yeah. Why would you not want that?
Which again just ties in so thoroughly the fact that your physicality, movement, all of that
is a form of expression.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just a thing that you do sometimes.
It's a form of expression, and you need. But you know, it shows you.
It's a part of you.
Yeah, and it shows you the concept of the arch again. That it's not about building. Yeah, you need two expressions. You need Mike and John. You need to express Mike. Mike needs to express himself, and John needs to express himself. You can't live only on one side of the arch. Then the arch collapses. One side has to be expressed, and that's why, by the way, the 120. Because if you go past 120, you're building John again. You're just building John very low. That's not the same thing as building Mike very high. So you need to build Mike very high. And very high means what? Means 120. If you go past that, you're not building Mike anymore, you're building John. So build John at fucking 180, sled sprints, fight and all that stuff, and then go build Mike through the VO2 max at 120. That, for me, the balance I'm achieving through this is ridiculous, and I see that in my training.
Now, I think by the time this comes out, I'm assuming you will have talked to at least the mentoring program about this.
I posted about it, I think, yesterday.
A little bit,
but by then I will have the numbers.
Well, I think by posting about it, what happens is then everyone gets so confused. It's like usually though you post about it and then like there has to be a call.
Yes, right. That's there will be a call.
So hopefully, by the time that anyone's seeing this, at least the mentoring program will.
We'll have numbers. We'll have a lot of stuff, and I'm going to start reading that. Although the study that I just read, I don't know what to read more because it's so clear. I was like, all right, there's another rabbit hole for you. So now it's practical application. I think like I'm past the theory on this with all the new stuff that I got. I think I'm at a stage where I need to put it into practice.
Well, and if I had to think out loud with no scientific experience whatsoever, is it just seems to me like it would be a fairly easy thing amongst anyone who is currently testing VO2 or VLA max.
Yeah, that means.
Well, that's what. But there are plenty of places that are in the world, like there's strength and conditioning spots and universities and things like that. Plenty of them that are doing that testing, and all you need to do is ask one question of the people.
Sad or anxious?
Yeah. You're feeling slightly depressed on a scale of 1 to 10, anxious on a scale of 1 to 10.
Maybe use other terms
or whatever term.
Exactly. Yeah. It wouldn't be that hard.
And then all we need to see is where those things line as a trend.
And then you do ratio. But again, don't look at the base value of VLA max. The only thing that matters is, so you can't just list VLA max and then list, it's the ratio between the two.
Yeah, it needs to be mapped.
Right. And that ratio, I believe, will give us the physiological measuring tool that we need to measure anxiety and measure depression. But also that means that we can go at it from a movement perspective, which we know already.
Yeah.
So none of this is new. I'm just making it more precise as I go, and I'm going into the hardware, but none of this is new.
Yeah.
We've always said it. But what does it say? Basically, is you need to express both sides of you. There's not one side, there's both. There's Mike and John, and both need to be expressed. That goes back to the beginning of StrongFit.
It sounds simple.
It's worth. I am so surprised at how I'm training right now and all this stuff. Since the fixed November and this has changed so much. I train like a maniac, but not as a maniac.
Focused,
Yeah, so like a maniac, but not as a maniac. I was a maniac training before, where now I just train like one, but without being one.
What I see in training, I'm usually around when you train from time to time. And what I see, at least like today and the other day, is what I see is just, is you're more present.
Yes.
I think that's the thing that I notice. In that normally what I do out of just respect is when someone's training, especially out at the office, I just leave them be and let them have their thing. Their time, whatever. You don't need to go down there and jam up a 15-minute conversation in a 60-minute workout. But I noticed the other day, that you're able still to then kind of step aside, have dialogue, still engage in the work. It's always kind of about the work. But it's much more than like reach, because it used to be if Julian was training guys, it's like sticking your hand in the fucking crocodile pond, like don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. If you catch me at the wrong time, it's a bad idea. Yes, I used to, but because I had to go there mentally.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I couldn't generate the intensity. Well, now it's not even that I'm generating the intensity. I'm just doing the fucking work.
Yeah.
I just don't need.
It doesn't demand so much of you.
Exactly. Yeah. But so that means also less anxiety. Means better recovery. Maybe, I'm far more efficient in that sense, but I also do more. I do more sets, heavier.
Oh, and it also means if you did need to go all the way there, that all the way there is just capable of more. But that you just can't spend all that time there because it fucks you up.
Right. And I think so. I think I'd spent so many years building the lactate, but not being able to use it as fuel. And so sense of self, anxiety, all that stuff, quitting MMA as a career, quitting jiu-jitsu as a career, quitting strongman as a career. Not that
Strongman, the sport will take more from you than it will ever give you.
But that's what I mean by the career. It's like trying to,
trying to navigate that space.
Trying to get better at it, right? Where I stopped because the anxiety always got to me. The second, by the way, mistake also was to make it an objective. That always fucked me over. But I can tell now where I will start to, up the training and then I could never take it. Mentally now I know why. Like for me, recovery was a day off because physically I felt recovered, but nervous system never was. And I think it's past that. I think my sense of self never recovered from one session to the next. So I was flustered by every session, which means I did less sets, which forced me to go even crazier, but not training properly.
So you could still get what you felt was enough, but you chase objectives.
And it's not enough because I don't have enough volume, so they have the competition. I'm understanding so much stuff about myself now in the last 2 months. It's crazy. This is good. It's good stuff, man.
I think we got enough out on the subject today. I was telling Julian before we went in, I've got some storage limitations today because it's been a busy week. So I don't know.
Plus, I just finished strongman training, so I'm good. I'm tired.
We're smoked. That was, but I think you've got homework. I think you have things to think about. They also have things they can go look up. And I think you explained this well enough to where people can kind of start piling through some of the information that's out there and start to draw their own conclusions.
By the way, by the time this goes out, we'll be close to December.
We'll definitely be in December.
All right, but so that's active meditation because that's going to be, for you guys, December is going to be active meditation.
By saying that now, Julian, you just said to me, Tyler, this episode has to be out before December.
No, or December 1st. That's all I'm saying, man.
Okay.
I might not, because we have 3 a week for a while. So. Anyway.
Kind of.
Guys, it was nice having you. I'm really tired. I'm going to go crash.
I'm going to go to the editing cave and get these things turned out.
Exactly.
So, all right, we'll see you guys next week or whenever.
Bye, everybody.